your cowboy pal, old Jack Spade. Leather's strong, leather's true. He's got a howdy just for you. Howdy, you two parts. Howdy, you two parts.
Howdy, you two parts. Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, as in the last video, I told you that I was going to do something I've never done before, but I wanted to try. And if you've seen a lot of my past videos, I like to do different kinds of holsters. And today, I'm going to do a holster, custom holster for a fishing pole with an open face reel, and it'll go on my side while on that way it'll be held while I'm tying my hooks and my different types of lures on, and I don't have to worry about my pole moving around or where to lay it down. It'll stand up in that holster, be out of my way, and hopefully it'll make things very convenient. So come on in and let's get started. All right, so I've got a lightweight open face reel with a lightweight fiberglass pole. So everything's pretty light, doesn't weigh a lot. Now I do have the other 3 foot of the pole out just for convenience for moving it around while I'm working. But you could do this for any type of reel. That's why I say it's kind of, these are going to be, you could use the same idea, but they're kind of going to be custom to what type of pole, what weight of the pole, what type of reel, the weight of the reel. So what I've done is I've taken me some poster board and I've made me a pattern, and it's a 2-piece pattern. I want to do all rivets, no stitching, and you can see how many holes I have in my pattern for the rivets in both pieces. And you can see in my pattern that I've got a slot here so that when you put that down in there, that reel actually falls into that slot. So that'll make it a lot more stable side to side and not keep it just from flopping over. At least that's my theory. So I've got 2 pieces. This pattern would change the size and the shape depending on the reel, the size of the reel, the weight of the reel, and the weight and the shape of, or the size and shape of the reel and the weight and the length of the pole. So I could give you the measurements of this, and I will, just in case you'd want to do one for a lightweight setup like this. This first piece that'll go on top, that'll actually hold the reel and the pole, is 9 3/8 in length, full length, and in height it's 7 inches. I've rounded the corners, and then obviously the slot is going to be custom to every reel that you use. The other piece is 4.5 inches wide, and then totally from bottom all the way to the top of the straps is 10 7/8. All the way to the top of the backer piece that matches up with the front is 7 inches. And the reason I did these straps this way, I contemplated it for a little bit, because I didn't want to have to try to go through 3 thicknesses. I'm making this out of, probably 9-ounce, 8 or 9-ounce leather, veg tan, so it's pretty stout. I didn't want to try to put rivets through, at least the rivets I have, through 3 thicknesses of this leather. So I made these straps. Instead of making a full piece that goes across, I made it 3/4 inch wide straps, and that'll come down and rivet there, 2 in each strap. That'll create my belt strap, or my belt loops. Then I can go ahead, flip that over, and put my front piece onto that back piece, and then I'd only be riveting all these through 2 thicknesses and not 3. So those rivets will be hidden underneath the top piece. So the next thing I need to do is, let's go ahead and I need to grab my leather. And this is some real nice veg tan. Like I said, it's probably 9-ounce, so it's pretty sturdy, pretty heavy. Let me grab my pen, and I'm gonna mark these on the back. I'm just gonna double check, make sure I don't have any imperfections on the finished side, which looks great. And flatten that out. And then I'll go ahead and trace my first piece here. And the reason I put my holes in my pattern is I'm going to go ahead and mark those too. While I'm here. And then move on down to the second half. Just lightly following that pattern, and then mark all my rivet holes. So there's my first piece. Then I'll go to my second piece. And I can go ahead and move that back up onto my granite piece here. I'm going to mark this where I can get the most out of this whole entire piece of leather. So I'll follow along those straps. And then mark all my rivet holes. And as thick as this leather is, you might think that's a lot of holes you're placing in there, but as thick as this leather is, it's not going to degrade the strength at all. So there's the second piece laid out. And again, there's the first piece. So I'm going to grab my cutting knife and my cutting mat, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got my cutting mat, I've got my knife. I'm going to flip that to a brand new side. Make sure I have it in there good and tight. Let's go ahead and start following these lines. Again, I'll go ahead and just cut this so I can get this piece out of my way. You could use a straight edge if you'd like. I'm just going to cut the straight sides first. And remove those. And then I'll do the corners. And these aren't real small corners, so I could probably go ahead and cut them with one cut. If they were smaller, I'd probably use multiple cuts. But it's a decent radius, so it makes it easier for me anyway to make those a single cut. Then on this, I've got an inside radius, so I'll start at the point and work my way around. And come up to finish on one side. Go back to my starting point and then go the other direction. And that whole piece should pop out. So there's the first piece cut out. Move these scraps off to the side. Bring my second piece in. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to cut this out to give me a smaller working piece. Then I can get that excess out of my way. And I just have this to work with. So a lot less material in my way. Instead of going straight this time, since I have these straps, I'm going to go ahead and start on that radius at the strap. And then come down to continue the straight line. And I can go ahead and keep turning this to where it's in front of me. It's much easier for me and much more comfortable for me to cut if I keep doing that. Now I'm going to come around here and I'm going to stop before I get to the end of this corner, because if I don't, I'm going to cut too far because of the angle of my blade. So I'm going to stop, come back, start in that corner, and let those two cuts meet. Same way here in the center. I've got an inside corner. I'm going to come down to the center, turn it around, start again on that opposite inside corner, and come around to where they meet. That keeps me from going too far and overcutting those straps or those inside corners. Now here I'm going to go ahead and go all the way down on the straps. And then cut the radius, because the radius is smaller than these other radiuses here. Move those pieces out of the way, and then all I have left are these two radiuses on the straps. And again, I can make those in multiple cuts if I want, or keep spinning the work and do it in a single cut. There's one. You notice I don't cut very far until I rotate my work again. I want to keep my work, the piece rotating, so I get a nice radius and I don't get jagged or straight, jagged lines or straight lines on my curves or my radiuses. Alright, so now I've got to set up my piece of granite and my poly cutting board, and we'll do some punching on these holes. Right, so I've got my granite piece, got just a cheap Dollar Tree poly cutting board. These things I can use over and over and over, and then finally they'll crack. And when they do, I gave $1, $1.25 for them, throw them in the trash, pull out another one. So, and that way you don't have to keep a big heavy duty poly cutting board around. I have one, but I haven't used it in quite a while since I discovered these cheap little ones here. So I've got a hole punch. It's an 1/8 inch, very small hole punch, and that's what I use for my rivets. I'll take my stropping leather and I'm going to polish the outside of my hole punch just to make it nice and slick and shiny. And I'm rotating this every time, just a little bit every time I strop that, and it gives it a nice shiny edge. So let's go ahead and start down here. I found that I started polishing my punches, my hollow punches, just here lately, and they work so much better. They seem to just glide right through. Even heavy leather. And I found too, you notice I set that poly board on top of that granite instead of on this wooden top, and it helps so much. You get more of a dead blow effect on top of that real thick, heavy granite. You don't get near as much bounce. So you get a nice solid hit every time. These expended pieces that are popping out of there, just move them out of the way. Put my holes in my straps. So there's all my holes punched in the back piece. Now pull the front piece. This is a piece that's going to wrap around and hold the actual rod and reel. So let's go ahead and punch those holes. And once you get a rhythm going, you got a nice sharp polished punch, goes pretty quickly. Remove all those expended pieces. And there's all the holes for the front piece. So let me clean this up and then I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm going to take my beveler, my small beveler, and what I want to do is I want to double check my holes here. Make sure I have these in the right direction. I'm going to put my rough side toward my body. So these will come around, those straps will come around like that. So that would be down. This finished size would be up. So I don't want to bevel the insides, just the top and the back. I want to leave the top of this, the back piece, and the bottom of the front piece flat so that they match up. So I'm just going to slightly put a light, small bevel on this front side. And this, again, these radiuses, if you work around them and rotate your work, you could probably get around the radiuses pretty easily. And this is personal preference too, whether you want to put it, bevel it at all, whether you want to spend the time doing that, or whether you want to bevel both sides, whatever. Doesn't really matter. That's up to you, however you want to do it. Again, even if you want to do it at all. So I'm around to the last radius where I started. And there's the top piece beveled. I'll flip this over because I just want to do the back of this piece, which makes it a little more difficult because it's a rough finish. Sometimes they could be a little raggedy on the edge from cutting. This one doesn't seem to be too bad. Again, the straps are not super important when it comes to putting a bevel on the back side, but I probably will go ahead and bevel the front side of the straps too, now that I think about it. So that's the only piece or pieces that on this whole thing that'll be beveled on both sides are these straps for the belt loop or loops. Again, these radiuses are nice. They're wide enough that I can continue around and then get a nice run on the straight cuts. And then I'm back around where I started. So the only thing to finish up here is I'm going to go ahead and do the outside just of the straps, not of the body piece, but just the straps. Give it a little cleaner look. It does make it look much nicer. So there's this piece beveled. And I'll clean this mess up. We'll go to the next step. Alright, so I've got my two pieces that are ready to dye, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently, and I'm going to do it two-tone. I'm going to do the back piece with the straps in black, and the front piece I'm going to do in Spanish brown. And these are Fivings dyes, pro dyes. There's the Spanish brown. And this is called United States Marine Corps Black, USMC Black. And I'm not sure what the difference is between their USMC and regular black, but I like using this USMC. It works great, covers great. So I'm going to do the back, this one in the black, the front in the Spanish brown. So let's do the black first. Pour that into my container. Clean that off. And this is just a piece of corrugated cardboard, one of those tri-fold things that you buy at Dollar Tree or Walmart or Hobby Lobby to, like, kids do set up presentations with them or whatever. So let's go ahead and begin with the straps. You can see the coverage of this is really good. I'm putting very little on that dauber. You can see how far it goes. Let's go ahead and do the edges. Again, only dip that dauber one time lightly, and that did the entire, all the edges on that piece. So I guess with the coverage that it has, I guess you could say that this USMC black from Fivings just has a higher coverage rate. I don't know. It just seems like it. It seems like it goes further than the regular black. I didn't notice any huge price difference, or I would have probably just got regular black, but I wanted to try this, and I like it. And you can see on the unfinished side, it really soaks it up, but it's a deep black. I'll just brush this real lightly on this side again. Residual left in the dauber. And that cleans out my cup real clean. You can tell by how quickly it's drying on that side, but that's not a lot on there. It's just what was left, just a little tiny bit. So we're going to set that aside. Make sure our hands, our gloves, I'm not going to change my gloves. I'm just going to make sure that dye is that black dye is nice and dry on those gloves. I don't get it coming off on my white towel. Set that black dye aside. Grab our front piece that we're going to do the Spanish brown. I'm going to assume this is not going to go as far as the black did, so try to use some long figure 8 motions on my first initial coat. Then I'll come back and just do vertical overlapping coats. And I can tell you already, just from the looks of what dye is in my container, my cup, that this is not going to go, the coverage is not going to go near as far as what the black USMC did. So, of course, it's a little bit bigger piece, but not a lot. Alright, so there's that side. And we can go ahead and go to the edge. I'm not going to refill my dauber yet. Let's look and see how far we get. And then you can see this side is already starting to dry. We'll go ahead and do the back side. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to have to put more dye in that container, that cup, before I ever get started. So I might as well do that now instead of running out. And this will be the enclosed front side. So this will be the inside of the front. So you won't see any of this, but you might see a little bit of it through this slot area. I'm going to have to put just a little bit more. That side really soaks it up. So between this Pro dye of this Spanish brown and the USMC black, the coverage is phenomenal on that black. So it goes much further. now I'm down to the point where I don't want to put too much in that cup because I don't want to throw it away. I don't like putting it back in my container, so I'm just adding it as I need it to finish this up. I am giving it 2 coats, even though most of it will be hidden. I still want it to be uniform color. And you can see this side's already drying. So if you compare those two side by side, it's going to make a nice contrast in color. So I'm going to let that sit overnight and make sure that that cures good on both pieces, and then I'll bring you back and we'll finish it up. Alright, so I've got next day, got both pieces dyed. The back is black, the front is Spanish brown. Before I put this thing together, I'm going to go ahead and protect it with some leather sheen, especially since its purpose is to hold a fishing pole. Chances of it coming in contact with moisture is very possible. So put some Fibings leather sheen on a clean white lint-free cloth. Make sure it's covered 100%. You can see that will darken that up momentarily. And what I want to do is just make sure that it's covered really well. Set that one aside. Get our black piece, do the same thing. Make sure it's covered completely. And set it aside. Now I'll wait for just a few minutes until that's no longer damp by touch. Then I'll take a clean microfiber cloth and we'll start buffing lightly. That's going to give it a nice sheen and also give it a nice protected surface from moisture and dirt. We'll do the same to the black back piece. So both those pieces are protected now. Just takes very few minutes to do that, so it's well worth it. I'll get set up to go ahead and put this thing together, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got my two pieces here, and I'm going to do my belt straps first because they'll be, actually the rivets will be hidden underneath this piece. So I want to do those first. So I've got my piece of granite or marble, whatever you have, your hard surface. Then I put a poly board on top, just so I'm not pounding directly on this with any metal. Then I'll go ahead and put a rivet through there. Put our anvil down. Put the second piece on, or the strap. Put our cap on. Get our setter, our mallet. Go ahead and set that. Go to the second one in the same strap. And repeat. Nice seated rivets. There's the strap. You can see through there for my belt. I'll do the same thing on the other strap. End up this project taking 14 rivets is what I counted. So it should be very strong, last a long time. Obviously you could stitch these, take much longer. So there's the two loops. Get a good shot on the side there. So with that being spread out here, that's going to make that to where it's not going to want to rock on my belt. At least that's the theory. Then what we want to do next is go ahead and start putting these two pieces together. Now, I'm going to start in the center so that if I have to, I can kind of swivel that to match up these holes on the ends. And I want to line them up the best I can before I ever set my first rivet. So there's my first one in the center. Then I'm going to go out. Toward the bottom. Then go to the top. Now remember, at the top I do have this belt loop. So I need to make sure that I put my anvil right up against that loop. When I put my rivet in there, so that I get a good set on that. Alright, so there's my first three across. Those are on the inside. Then I'm going to turn this around and that's where I'm going to start the next three. These are going to be the most difficult ones because I'm not going to have a ton of room inside here to use my setter. So I'll really have to flatten that down with my fingers to get that rivet to come through there in order to get my cap on. And then be able to hit my setter, because that's where it comes together there. So I'm not going to put any stress on the other side until I get all three on this side. Again, add my cap. Set it. Go to the other end. It's my third and final one on the inside. There's the three rivets on that side in. There's the three on that side. There's the three on that side. So now we can do the outside ones. Again, I'm going to start in the center. Let me see if I can turn this around so you can actually see it now that I don't have to physically hold that down so much. Pop my cap on. And I just hit these, try to hit them all the same and not drop them on the floor. But I try to hit them all equally, same number of times, just so all the sets are pretty even. And I hit them until I get, how I determine how many times I'm going to hit is I hit them until I get a nice solid thump on my mallet. You can hear the difference on that third hit. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, not 14. I counted wrong before I started. So I'm going to have to add 2 more rivets to my pile over here. Now we can go ahead and go to the final side. Put the rivet through, put the cap on. And you can hear that third smack, how it's kind of deadened. That's how I know I've got a good seat on that. And I've got one last one. Seat my cap. And there's the finished side front, the finished side back with my belt loops. So it should be nice and strong. Now, the only thing I have to do is when I folded this or rounded that off, this is supposed to be pretty round, like so, to hold that. So let's see if we can work this a little bit, or whether I'm going to have to wet form this. Didn't really want to wet form it if I didn't have to, but it's no big deal if I have to. So I can take something like the handle on my mallet, stick that in there and kind of push down on that crease where those two pieces fold over and come together there. Spread that out a little bit. Then I'll grab my pole, slide that in there where the reel goes down in that slot. You can see how much of it hangs out at the end. Again, that's going to be determined by how far you make your slot. You don't want to go too far, you're going to lose stability side to side. So you could just, once you get that set like that, if you didn't want to wet form it, you could just leave that set in there like so. And you can see it's pretty stable because the weight of the reel at the top is not even making it fall over. So it's pretty stable, just laying flat. So it goes in nice and easy, comes out nice and easy. So let's put it on a belt and let's see what happens. All right, so we've got it completed. Let's check it out and see how it works on the actual belt. Let's move this back just a little bit so you can see. And here it is on my side. And I've just got it hooked to my belt through my belt loops on my shorts. You slide that right in there like so. And it's pretty stable. Let me move this down just a hair. So it's easier to see. There we go. So if I'm standing, whether I'm standing on the bank or in a boat sitting down, either way, this is going to be convenient for me to bait my hook, change hooks, change lures, because I don't have to fool with my pole floating around or putting my arm around it and holding it while I'm trying to do. I can just take my pole, slide it down in my holster, and then I put my arm on this side or around this way. Either way, it's comfortable. And I have my line right in front of me. I don't have to worry about fighting anything. So everything's convenient. I'm done. Pull it out of the holster and I'm ready to fish. And it's very stable. The only concern I had was it going to want to fall over or tip backwards, forwards, and I can pull on it forwards and backwards, and those two loops that I put in there that are spaced out makes it really stable. It doesn't want to tip at all. Now, if you wanted to, you could do this on an angle. So if you wanted it to be angled forward, you could do that. It just depends on how you want to put this together. I put mine straight up and down just so I could have it right next to me, and then that would bring my line closer to me with it standing mostly straight up vertical. So my line would naturally want to come to me, so I don't have to keep reaching out all the time and grabbing my line. All right, a fairly simple project to do. The only time-consuming part was waiting for the dye to dry overnight. It's a very heavy-duty piece, but it's not heavy in weight, and that would depend on the thickness of the leather. Now you're going to want fairly decent, like I said, this is about 9 ounce, just because you want it to be pretty stable. So that thickness of leather made it very stable. So I appreciate you coming along. I appreciate you watching. Come back next week. We'll do something totally different. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate that. And as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.
Now like old Jack Spade will say, don't forget before you ride away. Like, share, subscribe, keep the trail alive. I'll see you in the next one, parts. Till then, keep riding hard.